Hi. Should I start or should you?
Hello and welcome to our Rockstar episode. We've brought on Taylor Swift's biggest fan. No, it's not his genre, guys. It's not his genre.
I said that like 5 times, but I really was trying to like appreciate the new album, and I did.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hello, y'all. Welcome to Zelf on the Shelf. I'm Tanner.
I'm Sam.
And today we are joined by...
It's me, Joe Maddock.
Front guitarist of the band Plastic Cherries. The Plastic Cherries, a local sensation and soon to be international sensation. You guys are genuine rock stars. It is so fun to see you guys play.
Thank you.
So Joe and I go back a little ways. We lived together at one point. We've hung out a bit and have always been a fascinating person to me and an artistic inspiration.
Thanks.
Unlike anything else I have seen in this world. This guy on the guitar shreds like nothing you've ever seen.
Oh, you're too nice. Thanks, Tanner. Well, y'all are really inspiring to me too, and I'm really happy to be on the channel. You know, long-time fan, first time caller. Yeah. So this is an honor for me, and yeah, I know we're probably going to go into like my ex-Mormon. So I'm ex-Mormon. That's kind of why I'm here, and I guess we'll go into that story at some point. But I'm happy to, I'm along for the ride. Whatever y'all want to talk about.
I think now's a good point to get into that ride.
We'll get into the music stuff. Well, I'm sure it'll be peppered throughout. But why don't we start by, in Mormon Stories fashion, why don't you tell us about your Mormon upbringing and what your life was like as a child?
Well, yeah, most people who know me know that I'm ex-Mormon. I don't usually go into too much detail about it because I don't want to make people uncomfortable, or sometimes people just don't understand. But, so yeah, I'm happy to like go into more detail about it. I grew up on the West Coast, so I was like a California Mormon, basically.
Well, no wonder.
Yeah, my family's from Portland, Oregon. My dad's job moved us to the Sacramento area. And growing up there, I was in like a tiny little suburb with like a dairy and a flea market. And I was this Mormon kid, I was maybe one of the like 5 Mormon kids in the town or something. We had like a ward, like a home ward and everything. When I was 10, I got into the guitar. I started watching MTV, and like, I borrowed a Nirvana cassette from my friend, and it like blew my mind wide open, and I was just like, this is it. And so I asked my parents for a guitar.
I'm just gonna cue the music. I want to sell my soul on MTV by the Plastic Cherries.
I grew up. So that's maybe my Mormon story. I was Mormon. I watched way too much MTV, and now I'm not.
That's exactly what they were worried about.
That's the Cliff Notes. Yeah, rock and roll does corrupt the youth. But yeah, I mean...
Any Mick Jagger? Any
Not till later.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I love the Stones now. They're one of my favorite bands now, but I didn't get into them until like, later on.
Did you happen to see that video that we did about the Mick Jagger Mormon connection?
Oh, right. Well, I did hear that story as a kid. When the General Authority runs into Mick Jagger on the plane and is, it's like, oh, you just want to corrupt the youth. And Anyway, okay, so grew up as a Mormon kid who loved rock and roll. And I got my first guitar, when I was 10. And then when I was like 13, I joined this summer program where there was a music store, and they would get all the kids in the area and pair them up in bands, and then you'd do a battle of the bands thing. And there were these 2 brothers in the band, the drummer and the bass player. And to tell the story, I showed up to band practice one day. My mom's got like 4 baby girls in tow. I'm wearing my like suburban clothes from like Mervyn's.
Wait, how many siblings did you have?
I have 4 younger sisters, and they were all in the picture at that point. Or no, actually, that's not true. My youngest sister Kate wasn't born yet. But anyway, 3 baby girls. I'm very suburban looking. We shopped at Mervyn's, which is like Old Navy.
I forgot about Mervyn's.
You remember Mervyn's?
Yeah.
And these kids in the band I was in were like cool, urban, progressive.
Urban Mervyn's.
Yeah. They were wearing, thrift store clothes, and they were like into all these cool bands, and they played music, and Anyway, they lived in a way different part of the area. They were like several towns over. We get together in a band. I show up to band practice, and they just like look at my family, and they're like, "Hey, are you Mormon?" And I was really embarrassed. I was like, "Oh, you sniffed it out, yeah."
The light in my eyes too strong.
They're like, "No, you're doing Janice Cat Perry covers."
Oh man. So yeah, I was a little embarrassed, but I was like, yeah, how did you know? And they were like, oh, we used to be.
Whoa.
And I just like those 4 words like just rattled around in my head like used to be like you can
that was
used
your
to
first song. Used to be.
you can used to be. Yeah, so that was the beginning of it, I think. And I was maybe 13, 14. Next school year, I became like a total rebel. I was listening to punk rock, tried alcohol for the first time.
Oh,
Whoa.
bad boy.
I was doing some bad boy stuff. And I remember also that was like the year that it was in the curriculum to read 1984. And so I remember reading the like thought control, stuff and being like, this sounds very familiar.
I think I've seen this somewhere.
Yeah. I got into, like punk music, which is very anti-authoritarian. And so it all kind of like came together. And that school year, I was like, all right, I don't believe in the church anymore. And I went to one of these cool brothers from the band. There was like a show that we were both going to. And I worked up all this courage, and I was like really scared, and I was like, okay, I'm going to say it to him. I don't believe in the church anymore. I said it, and I was like terrified. And then the next day at church, we had this like really intense bishop who like, he just had this like, he would gaze at you, he had like the crocodile tears, the super spiritual, serious vibe. He was like just so like intense. And he cornered me in the hallway like the day after I told my friend this. And he was like, what do you tell your friends about the church? I know. I was.
Did he discern it, or did
that's
they
the
tell
thing.
him?
That's the thing. So again, these kids they're from like another part of town. There's no way that he would have like known about that. And it was literally the day after I finally said it out loud. I worked up all that courage, and when he cornered me, I was like, that like turned my whole life upside down. I was like, okay, well maybe it's really true.
Shit.
Yeah, maybe he like knew through the Holy Spirit. So,
Or
anyway.
maybe he knew from all your punk music.
And that's the thing. Like looking back, I realized, I was probably like, I'm a pretty easy book to read. Like I don't keep secrets well. Like he could probably just tell I was going through a rebellious phase. There were other friends at school who might have known that I was like maybe getting critical of that stuff. So who knows how he knew?
But at those little things where you're like,
At that moment, I was like, it was the Holy Spirit, and I am in trouble.
It's interesting to imagine a child or a teenager thinking that another adult can read their thoughts. Because I never experienced that growing up. You're always just like, this is my private little box, no one's getting in here. I'm unreadable, as I was obviously like pretty transparent in many ways as kids are.
Yeah. So that flipped things around. He called me into his office. I confessed all of the rebellious things I had done, except for telling my friend that I didn't believe, because I thought that was like maybe the unpardonable sin. I thought I was like in trouble. So through pretty much my entire teenage years, I lived with this fear and anxiety, and it was pretty intense that I had like committed the unpardonable sin, and I was like screwed. Yeah, it was really hard.
That's
but
sad.
Yeah,
it's really sad.
I know. But then we got, so when I was getting to, about to graduate high school, mission age, all that, we got a new bishop, and he was like, nice guy bishop, super nice guy. Like, still to this day, I'm like, he was great. Like, yeah, sure, he was a Mormon bishop, whatever, but he was awesome dude, really easy to talk to, really supportive, really just genuine and loving and stuff. And I felt way more comfortable talking to him. So I told him about the one thing I hadn't confessed, which is that I had told that friend that I didn't believe, and I thought I might have committed the unpardonable sin. And he was like, well, as long as you move forward, I don't see any reason why you can't serve a mission, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just like this weight off my shoulders, right? Of like, I have a chance, okay. And then I went gung-ho. I was like, Mormon nerd boy. I was watching the BYU channel.
Close.
Oh yeah, the BYU channel.
I was watching the BYU channel for fun.
Yep.
I was like, I wanted to be an institute teacher. I was like hitting up the like LDS bookstore all the time. I was like true blue, full in at that point. So I went on a mission
to
Guatemala. Right when I got there was, I don't know if I should say this, but there was a sex scandal.
Oh.
Yeah.
You should say it.
I should
Was
say
it a
it.
sex
For sure.
scandal?
Well, these things I suppose happen, but I showed up to the mission, and like it was like my first transfer or whatever, and there was a missionary who had gotten somebody pregnant, and he got sent home, and then everybody who knew about it had gotten sent home, And so then I had a whole new anxiety of like, oh no, maybe if I don't tell on my companion and he's up to something, I'm going to get sent home. So that first part of the mission was like a lot of anxiety. I remember being like in tears when I sent my first email back home, you know, yeah. But I got used to it. And like the mission wasn't entirely a bad experience. I was in a really interesting part of the world. I learned a lot of stuff, you know, learned a new language, the whole bit. People ask me a lot if I like regret that. And I don't know if I fully do, but I also know that y'all talk about like the like cult criteria or whatever, like a high demand religion criteria.
Yeah.
And that like Mormonism maybe day to day doesn't necessarily meet all of it, but when you're on your mission, like really meets it. And I feel that, like I feel the trauma of that, you know, like not being, I couldn't play guitar for 2 years.
Yeah, that
That's
would be
so nuts.
huge for you.
It was weird. It was like I was missing parts of myself.
I thought missionaries often would have guitars and they were allowed to play.
So after the sex scandal, the guitars were outlawed.
no.
All
They gave
joy
the guitars.
must be.
Yeah, we had guitars for the first like couple
No.
weeks, and then the mission president said no more guitars.
So random.
I was heartbroken.
You would think that the guitar might, you know, give someone something to do that isn't impregnating something.
No, first you're strumming a guitar, next you're
Yep.
strumming a...
Yep, you're getting too good with your fingers, it can only go downhill.
What'd you say about lubing up those guitars? Yeah.
Anyway, I mean the guitar is kind of a sexual instrument, I guess, but
You would say that.
okay. Anyway, I wasn't allowed to play guitar for 2 years, but I did like again. It wasn't all bad, but you know we all know the mission is a lot. Got home.
Did you ever want to go home while you were on your mission?
Well, I was, again, so this was like after all of that stuff from my teenage years, I was so true blue. I was so bought in. I was like 100%, you know. So I didn't want to go home. I was afraid of being sent home. I was afraid of getting in trouble because of all the stuff that had happened. But I was committed at that point. Like I was really in it. Yeah. I mean, it was again, like I say, at first it was emotionally a lot. But I wouldn't say that I like wanted to go home. I was just overwhelmed and scared for 2 years.
Overworked, overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah.
No guitar.
No guitar.
So then you got home.
Got home, you know, went to BYU. And so that was me moving from California to Utah. We got a cat in the mix here.
Hey.
Hi, Banksy.
He also loves the guitar, fun fact. Anytime I play the guitar, he comes and sits right by it. Or anytime a speaker is going,
That's
he likes
adorable.
to sit right by it. So you guys could probably be friends.
I believe it. It's a cute little meow.
If you closed your legs, I bet he'd come sit with you.
Like this?
Yeah, just give him some space.
Oh my gosh, yeah, here he comes. He's thinking about
That's
it.
fine.
Okay, we got stuff to talk about. Where were we? Mission, home.
What were you
BYU.
studying at BYU?
I changed majors a lot. I started as an English major, and then I switched to like a linguistics major. And then, well, by that point, I ended up leaving the church. So.
While you're at BYU?
Yeah. Yeah, I left the church at BYU, basically.
And what was the progression of that?
Yeah, well, I moved out to Utah. I noticed a big change in the vibe when I went to church.
Shocking.
It wasn't like California.
It wasn't like California. Like, in California, you know, Mormonism was just like my thing, and everybody had kind of a live and let live attitude about it. And it was a community, and I loved just a lot of the people in my ward. They were really sweet people, and it just felt very genuine. Like, this is just our thing, you know, don't bug us about it. I know it's a little weird, but this is, you know, what we do. And then you get to Utah, and it's this, like, keeping up with the Joneses vibe, and it felt, like, kind of sterile and insincere, and I'd go to church, no one was singing. And, like, in Guatemala, they sing at the top of their lungs, even if they can't sing, you know? There's just this passion that felt like it was missing when I started going to church at BYU, and it started feeling very, very phony, you know? And that might have been the first thing that led towards me actually leaving. Like, I was pretty disillusioned by that.
How long after your mission was sort of like your beginning to question?
Well, I guess leading up to the mission, I definitely started having questions, like when I went through the temple, and, you know, I started reading through, all the New Testament and Book of Mormon and seeing where there were, direct passages that were, completely lifted from it. I started having questions on my mission for sure. But you know how it is. You've got, so much investment in it that you just suppress them and, you know, the shelf and the whatnot, and you kind of find a way to talk yourself out of it. So I definitely had like lingering questions, and of course there was like the teenage rebelliousness in the back of my head of just like kind of knowing on a gut level that the authoritarianism of it like wasn't my thing, you know. But I definitely suppressed all of that through the mission and BYU years. Mm-hmm. And then it just suddenly kind of came rearing its head. I saw one YouTube video. It was actually a YouTube video that did it. So I was at BYU. A couple factors were conspiring, I think, towards it. My family was going through a hard time, so I think that also kind of made me like be like, oh, maybe this like perfect vision of what things are supposed to be isn't, you know, all that. That was a small part of it. I had one professor at BYU who was really like forward thinking and encouraged like a lot of critical thought. It was like a debate class basically where they talked about like logic and that sort of stuff. I took like some philosophy classes at BYU that also kind of opened up my mind to like thinking more critically. That was part of it. But what really did it was I found this YouTube video while I was researching for one of those classes of like, it's kind of corny to say it, and maybe y'all have seen it. It's made by like a Christian church. And they're showing all of the evidence as to like why the Book of Abraham isn't real. Have you guys seen that one? It's called like the Lost Book of Abraham.
I haven't seen that specific one, I don't think.
But the Book of Abraham was a big thing for me. It's a real smoking gun.
It is. That was like what did it for me, basically.
You're like, oh, this is not real.
Yeah. The video was like presented in this like style that was very like friendly towards Mormons. Like the guy kind of seemed Mormon and he kind of talked Mormon, and it felt like something you would watch on like BYU TV. But they were like interviewing Egyptologists, and they're going through like, you know, comparing what the book says and what Egyptologists actually know that those hieroglyphs mean and stuff like that, right? They're just like, oh yeah, definitely not real. And I was just like, it really hit. That was the first time I had seen it like spelled out by experts, you know, in a very compelling way that I could kind of get behind, and it didn't feel like anti-Mormon propaganda or something. And I was like, oh yeah, it's like not real. Oh wow. And then like over the next week, I let myself ask all the questions that you don't let yourself ask. How many wives did Joseph Smith have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you know, and started kind of digging through all the reasons that people leave. And in the matter of like a week, I was like, oh yeah, not real. Oops. And it was, yeah, like a bomb had dropped.
Were you going about your normal life in that week? Like, were you going to class and stuff?
I was going to class. I was going to church. I remember, like, meeting up with my family for meals, and I could tell that they could sort of, like, read it on me. I would, like, drop maybe little hints, like, oh, there's this Joseph Smith movie, and look, it's just him and Emma. Huh, funny. You know, stuff like that. Yeah, it was like this bomb had just totally dropped, and it was a lot. And yeah, it was hard. And in sharing this story, I know I feel weird because I'm just talking about myself a bunch now.
No,
that's the point.
But I guess that's what I'm here to do.
Everyone's sick of us. So.
No, that's not true. But I don't know. Yeah. Leaving the church was like the hardest thing I've ever done. And when it hit me, and it was sudden. It wasn't like, I mean, obviously that's why I prefaced it with all that build up, because there was some like back in the mind stuff, but it was like, boom, don't believe it anymore. And now what am I going to do? I'm at BYU. I'll get kicked out of school, and I'm not a good liar. Like I said, I can't keep a secret. I couldn't be like, yes, Bishop, I actually do believe it. Like, no, I got to find a new school. I got to find a new life. I thought about moving back to California. Yeah, my family could kind of tell, and I told them all pretty quickly after I had realized. Obviously, they didn't take it well, and you know, it's been years. We're better now, but it was really hard. It was really hard, and I guess I just hope in sharing this story that, like, not to say that I don't have my life figured out now, but I'm happy. You know, and it gets better, and there's so much stuff that I've been able to enjoy and appreciate, and that has enriched my life that I never could have done if I hadn't left the church. And so, like, I know that a lot of people watching this channel are like in the thick of it, and it does get better. But I remember how hard it was. It was very, very hard. I can't imagine anything harder than that, like mental health wise and just like life wise. It was huge.
Did you have any support around you, like in person?
Well, so, you know, told my family. My mom, God bless her heart, you know, she's very extreme with her religious approach, and so she didn't take it well. My dad's a little bit more kind of like a worldly sort, you know, and he kind of tried to understand, but he obviously wasn't happy about it either. And he just recommended that I talk to my uncle, who at the time was a BYU professor. Really sweet guy, really amazing dude. And he was just kind of racking his brain for like, okay, who could talk Joe into staying? Mm-hmm. And so I talked to my uncle, who was a BYU professor, and I talked to, well, I think the plan was for me to talk to one of my religion professors, who I thought was kind of cool, but we didn't end up doing that. But anyway, talked to my uncle, kind of ran through the stuff. A lot of the stuff I ran through with him was like the racist stuff. I was like, hey, like, the church was like openly racist. This is really bad. And what he said back was just like, yeah, if I had known that before I joined, I might not have joined. I was just like,
at least he was honest.
He was super honest with it. But again, you know, and this is where it gets complicated, and where the question of like, okay, you find this stuff out, do you leave? Like, I think something I learned in my process is that there are a lot of people whose just kind of emotional and personal makeup is such that they're not going to leave a group that they're loyal to, even if they see the flaws with it. And like, I had a huge problem with that at first. I was like, guys, come on. Mm-hmm. But like, I've come around on that a little, and I'm like, some people can maybe stay in, try to make it a better place. It's not going anywhere. So, you know, he was kind of one of those types of people where he definitely saw the problems with it, but he stayed in because he was a loyal guy, and, you know, and that's great. He was a great person. But still, that conversation didn't do a lot to dissuade me from leaving. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So it's the stuff is real.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, support-wise. I was dating somebody at the time who was more of a kind of like a liberal Mormon, and that felt like my main source of support. But obviously, because she wanted to stay in the church, didn't work out. I moved to Salt Lake, changed schools, and then I found my support. You know, here, and that was something I was kind of wanting to say too, is that Thanksies, just start the show.
Center stage, yep.
But part of my like love for the city of Salt Lake is like the amount of support that I received over the course of my years living here. That was what helped lift me out of the depression and the fear and all the stuff that happens when you leave the church. Is just like making friendships here, and I would say that like this friendship is included in that. You know, it continues on, and I fell in love. My sweetheart Shelby is the vocalist of our band.
And just one of the best people on the face of planet Earth.
It's true.
You said you didn't feel like you had your life together now, but I'm like, you're married to Shelby.
I'm very lucky. Very lucky.
Home is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. You guys got some things figured out.
She's got a lot of stuff figured. We got some stuff figured out together. We're happy, you know, and that's ultimately like what's important. Mm-hmm. It's just like to be happy and to find love and joy and enrichment in your life. Shelby and I fell in love. We moved to Portland together, which is where my family's originally from. And, you know, as a musician, I had, of course, like been in love with that city for a long time. Like we would go up to visit my grandma, and she actually like was instrumental in getting like my first guitar for me when I was a kid.
Instrumental guitar, that's good.
Yeah. No pun intended. But like, yeah, I had always really loved the music appreciation of that city, and and Shelby wanted to live somewhere besides Utah. You know, she grew up here, and she did not grow up LDS, but in Utah, you know. Just wanted to experience something else. So, yeah, we moved up to Portland together. We were there for a total of like 5 years, and we grew a lot as people. And in terms of my ex-Mormon story, like being in a place that's not predominantly Mormon anymore had like, it's like there's two sides to it. Being here, everybody understands. You know, I can tell someone I'm ex-Mormon, and they basically understand my experience. Maybe not in every detail, but, you know, they get it. You go up to a place like Portland or like the West Coast, and, you know, religion is this subject that people just kind of don't talk about. People are just sort of polite about it. Like nobody really knows, what is that, like Amish or something? Like nobody really knows what you mean when you say it. And so in a lot of ways that was refreshing to be in a place where people didn't really know. And obviously some people do, but like I could just kind of develop parts of my identity that had nothing to do with the church, not even think about the church, you know, a lot of the time. And that was really good for me. I think that got me to a new place with it. Moving back here, I definitely do think about the church more than I used to when I was up there. But, like, it's good. Like, I think there's still always going to be stuff to unpack, and it's, like, a lifelong process, you know? There's that whole, like, leave the church alone thing and whatever, you know? People got to, like, figure their stuff out. But leaving it alone sometimes can be good. So that's kind of what Portland was in terms of my ex-Mormon experience. I had a band up there. But, you know, and there was learning around that kind of stuff too. But then we moved back, met y'all, and that kind of brings us up to date. And then we started the band. And yeah, I guess I don't know if there are any questions related to like my Mormon story that we should go over. Or?
I'm just curious if you're, because it sounds like you've always been into rock and roll, and it doesn't seem like you were super inhibited in that by the church, except for when you couldn't have a guitar, or maybe when more of your focus and energy was being siphoned toward that.
Yeah.
But did your Mormon transition affect your artistry at all?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. When I was Mormon, I was still very much into rock music, punk, indie music. Like, my music taste didn't change dramatically. But I do remember when I was really in the thick of it, and this is a little embarrassing, but when I was really, like, depressed and had barely left the church and didn't know what was going to happen, I wrote these, like, really folky, emo-y, emotional, kind of pouring my heart out on the page songs that I hope nobody ever hears. But music took on a new role as not just like a hobby or an interest, but as like therapy for me at that time. And I was really glad that I just had my guitar to like kind of like pour my feelings into when it was really hard, you know? So that changed. I think I kind of also started to understand some of the more subversive subtext of rock and roll, you know? Like, that stuff wasn't off limits anymore. Like, I could kind of see, like, oh, this came from, you know, changes in social norms in the 50s and 60s and in integration of all these parts of our humanity, you know? And I started to kind of see the big picture about rock music. Even though I had always loved it, it did take on a different meaning for me outside the church, for sure, yeah.
And, I mean, well, I asked that because I feel like an important part of a lot of people's Mormon transition, especially for those who had their whole identity wrapped up in it, because that's what makes leaving so hard, right? Is like all of a sudden you have no more community, all of a sudden you have no idea what's actually happening in the universe, in the world, or how we got here, or where we're going, and you have to like, you just don't know anything, and you don't have anything to hold on to, and everything feels just like overwhelming. And I think a big part of people's healing journey is like learning how to process that through creativity, through communities of shared interests, like maybe the music community is for you, and
cute cats.
Yeah, cute cats, you know, all the important things. So tell us about your music today. What's some of your like inspirations?
Yeah. So the band that I'm in right now is called the Plastic Cherries. If you're in the Salt Lake area and you're looking for something to do on Friday, we're going to have a big Halloween party. Everyone's going to be dressed up. It's going to be wild crazy. It's going to be
Urban Lounge. What
Urban
time?
Lounge. I think the show officially starts at 7. It's going to go until close. We're going to have a DJ. Some other bands there, Dad Bod and Casio Ghost, who are both really great local bands. There's a lot of really fun local bands right now. I think like the pandemic kind of like got everybody who is musically inclined like into a really creative space, and now we're like seeing the flower kind of blossom from that.
Totally.
And yeah, for us that meant like me and Shelby started like collaborating on music together, because she had always been like a visual artist and always had loved singing from the time she was like a child. Mm-hmm. And but had always been like embarrassed to sing in public. And so our first show was like a big milestone for her, because that was her first time singing in front of people since she was like a kid.
Wow. And she has such a beautiful voice.
She does.
Just instantly addicted. Was like, let's do that again.
Especially like recording. Okay, so I play guitar. I love music. Singing, not so much my thing. And I've tried to be the singer.
You do have a great voice, and I do like a lot of your your solo stuff is really good too.
Thanks.
I follow you on SoundCloud. I know what your deep tracks are.
No one, don't go look at those. That's practice, but I understand. Yeah, singing is not like my big passion. You know, it's more like the arrangement and the songwriting and the instruments and all that. So having her with this beautiful voice where she can just like jump in on like a recording and take like 2 takes and it's good. It's like, okay, we can start putting stuff out. So that was like really empowering to like have that collaboration. And yeah, our influences, like another thing about this band is that we are letting ourselves have fun. And I think other bands I've been in, it's more that kind of 90s sad boy vibe of like, oh, this is serious. This is art, you know? And we don't have that in this band. And it's really refreshing and liberating. And I think that's part of why it's like kind of resonated is it's just like, it's supposed to be fun, you guys. You know, obviously there's like creativity and artistry at certain points and everything, but first and foremost, like let's dance, you know.
Your
let's
shows are fun. Catch me in the front in the cherry pit, going hard.
It's been a really special time for us. We've been really busy this last year, but it's been great to like invest in this thing that I'm so passionate about that has always kind of been in the background, and I've tried, but I've never really put it out there the way that we've done with this band, and having like the support of Shelby and our other bandmates and everybody in the community it's been great. It's been a really special time for us. So yeah, that's where we're at now.
Beautiful.
What advice would you give to someone in the position you were in as a teenager, or to your younger self?
Gosh, that's a great question. Well, it's like I was saying, it gets better, you know? And so don't succumb to this like despair of going through this thing where you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I promise that light at the end of the tunnel is there. You know, it really, really, really is. But at the moment that you're first figuring this stuff out, it's just you're going through like a cyclone of emotions, and you just don't know what life even is anymore. You've had all these clear-cut answers that felt so real, and then you find out that they're not. Sam, I feel like, again, I'm a fan of the channel. I feel like something I've seen you say is that it's actually a blessing to go through this transition, because from the experience of questioning everything in your life, you develop this like critical faculty, right? Where you're not as easily duped by kind of groupthink mentalities. Yeah, hopefully. It can go either way. You know, you've got like this like should I say cult-shaped hole in your heart.
Yes.
and here's the thing, like as humans, like that stuff's all natural. Maybe I filled the cult-shaped hole in my heart with rock and roll. You know, like
must be nice.
I don't know. It feels good to be devoted to something. It feels good to be part of something that's bigger than yourself. That's all totally natural, and like it's okay. You know, I think just having the self-awareness of that, so that you don't get too carried away or take it too seriously. Just kind of have that little asterisk in the back of your mind of everything that you think.
Yeah.
You know.
We were just talking about that yesterday. Like, however deeply you believe anything, just always have that little bit of space of just like, what if I'm completely wrong and or delusional?
Yeah. Just at the very least, it'll like help you laugh at yourself more.
Yeah.
And that's like so important. You
Yeah.
just can't take yourself too seriously.
You cannot.
That's true in rock and roll. That's true in leaving Mormonism. And that's a truth on this channel.
Yeah, kill the cringe.
Yeah,
Be
totally.
the cringe.
Be the cringe. Embrace the cringe within.
Be the cringe you wish was okay in this world. That's why I love Taylor Swift.
No, I get it.
Guys, I have a very low tolerance for new music, especially local bands, and I genuinely think the Plastic Cherries are amazing. Tana knows this about me. Like, when do I listen to new music? Or like, for me to like it's just hard.
Sam's a Taylor Swift day in, day
it's
out,
just
or
Taylor
lo-fi.
Swift. It's like autumn lo-fi, the 1975 Taylor Swift, but the Plastic Cherries I think are amazing and really fun and perfect for this moment.
Yeah, if you want a super fun activity, come this Friday, Urban Lounge. It's going to be such a fun time. You guys really put on a hell of a show. It's so fun.
Well, you guys are embarrassing me, and it's really sweet. Yeah, it's really sweet though. We can't thank everybody enough for the support. Can't thank you enough for the support. We're having a lot of fun. and just kind of chasing our dreams. I guess that would be my following, my parting thought is follow your dreams.
Yeah, because you're gonna die one day.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
It's true. I think that's a pretty good thought to end on. Just follow your heart. You know, it's you can trust your own heart.
Yeah.
And I think if you're in a faith transition, especially, it's important to know that you can listen to this guy. He usually knows what's up.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for coming on the show. Thanks. You all for watching. Of course, if you want to support the channel, hop on over to Patreon. Become a monthly subscriber. We have exclusive content that's a lot of fun. Check out our merch on Etsy. We'll put a link
bucket
below.
hats, perfect for autumn. By the time this comes out, our candle collab. We're actually pushing the candle release to Tuesday because there's some behind this.
Cool.
Jen had a situation come up. But yeah, buy our candle.
Check out our candle, yeah. All right, we'll see you all this Friday.
This won't be out before. You guys keep
I'm editing it.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay, love you.